Hey, this is Paul from the Wise Man Sphere, and you're listening to Interview Under Fire.
Thank you so much for joining our podcast today, Interview Under Fire. You know, this is a big month for you guys. I'm going to start off with the obvious. How are you guys doing? How have things been for you and your band as of late? And how has a lockdown been, in Indiana?
Dude, thanks for having us, man. Things have been pretty good for us, to be honest. Like we can't really complain. Most of our members have already been working from home since before the pandemic began, so it was not too rough of a transition, except for our poor bassist Thomas, who he goes to IU, Indiana University, and they shut down the campus, so he got sent home, and he's not having as much fun. But yeah, all things considered, we're doing great, and it's been an exciting month for us just with singles coming out and then prepping for this album release that we've been building towards for the past 3-ish years now.
Excitement. That's like a key word I want to throw in there, because that's not probably the best term to throw around, like, because you have to find yourself to, find something to be excited for.
Yeah.
And, it's good to have, an album release looking forward to it. And I want to get, I want to touch on Valley of Kings in just a bit, but, being stuck at home, like we all are, I'm stuck in my friend's house, for a good reason, of course, and being a drummer, how are you keeping up with your drumming? Do you live in a place where you can just go all out and play as much as you can without the neighbors going crazy?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's different for like vocalists and guitars, but as far as a drummer, and I love having drummers on the show because it's a whole different world for you guys when it comes to being in this position.
For sure. Dude, yeah, I'm super fortunate. I've got a house with my business partner here in Indianapolis. We're in the Broad Ripple area, which is like north end of the city, but can't see it, but just off camera, I've got a little electronic kit in my room that I'm playing on to keep myself from going insane. But then also I have 2 acoustic kits down in our basement. And actually up until the pandemic hit, we've been hosting shows for bands in our basement. It's sort of been like a basement venue for the past like year and a half-ish, called the Penthouse, which we're going to have to be shutting down here soon, unfortunately, just because of insurance issues. But
oh, man.
It was fun while it lasted, but we had, I don't know if you know, like Bill Murray and Red Handed Denial and Seraphim, but we had some like some cool acts down there. Yeah, it's just been a really good time. But, that said, it's pretty sound dampened. There's a lot of like panels up, and so I can play the acoustic kit. I just haven't been recently, so I don't absolutely drive my housemates insane while we're all trapped together for the foreseeable future.
So would you consider that kind of like a live venue you have, like a small venue that you guys actually own or owned?
Yeah, for legal purposes, no, but yes, in practice. So the way we've run it is actually, this is sort of a direct externality of us playing shows on the road with the bands that we're involved with as bandmates. We've just played so many cool DIY venues over the years, and Indianapolis is it's not like a drought as far as venues are concerned, but there are really about 3 that you can actually play that will sort of permit and promote heavy music, and it's been really difficult at times, just depending who the promoter is and what the bill is, and sort of like playing into the local scene to even get shows in your hometown, which has been frustrating. So when I moved in this house a couple of years back, we sort of started these plans to form this venue, bought a PA system, soundproofed it, and then we would just do a donation-based system, so that people would come in and if they can donate $5 to the touring band, awesome. If not, like, just have fun with everybody. And yeah, dude, it's been super great. We've had some pretty packed shows, but it's facilitated a really good environment for us as a band to practice as well, and to just sort of stash all of our gear and have an environment that's, like you were saying, it's not going to blow the roof off the house just because a little bit of acoustic treatment goes a long way on a concrete basement.
Is there anything the fans can do to help you guys out as far as that is concerned? For the people who are listening, about the venue that you guys did gigs in, there are a few nonprofit organizations, and one I want to give a shout out to NEVA. They're actually, I don't know if you've heard about this.
Yeah, man.
So they actually, unfortunately, one of our most popular venues here in Dallas, the Gas Monkey, which I've, worked with so many artists, they just closed down, and it's a very popular one. Dang. So I don't know, like, is there something you can maybe, plug in for the fans to maybe help you guys out as far as that is concerned? Or do you have anything set up?
Regrettably, like, the issue, it's always been nonprofit run here in at the Penthouse, but unfortunately the issue we're running into is there's an umbrella insurance policy that covers our home as well as my business partner's parents' home because they are on the deed with him. So basically, it just came down to they were advised by their insurance company to not let out of town bands be playing and stuff, just because, if somebody did, fall, hit their head, or like even get in a car crash on their way home from a show or whatever, they could potentially sue, family for their assets rather than just the housemates. So it's sort of out of our hands, but it's all right. Like we had a good run with it, and we got a lot of, like, a whole photo wall of memories that we get to keep. So it's a good time.
Well, I mean, who knows how things are going to turn out after this pandemic? It's just so much uncertainty, and that's really where we're at. We got to take it day by day. When you're talking about day by day, this is the perfect example when it comes to 100%. Being in that predicament. Now, does this pandemic, we're talking about being at home and trying to get busy with the things we're getting busy with. Does this open up new things for you personally and artistically that you have not noticed before?
Good question, man. Actually, I would say yes, and I think my bandmates would agree for the most part. We've just had more time and fewer expectations on our time to devote toward writing stuff. So, for example, we've written a bunch of demos for LP4, written a bunch of like concept stuff for the fourth record, but then also just in terms of promoting rollout for the album. It's kind of, it's with every weakness, there's an opportunity, right? And every strengths and threats are correlated. So, taking what could be perceived as like a terrible threat to an album rollout and saying, okay, what's the opportunity in here? Well, it's the fact everybody's, caged at home, sort of desperate for new content. How do we market to that? We've got extra time to do, sort of online promotion, really hit the ground with ads and everything like that. But then also just from a writing standpoint, we've been really trying to hit the ground running because this last record took a really, really long time to put out. We don't want that to happen again. So we're being really proactive about this next record.
Well, let me tell you, it's been on repeat on my system for the last week or so. So I think you guys did, man, when it comes to progressing, the fan in me I think you guys reached just to tap into a different part of the wise man's fear that you have never tapped in before. And when you talk about writing already concept writing for the next album, I'm already getting excited. So I don't want to, we got other stuff to talk about, but that's great. I love that you guys are keeping yourself busy. Of course, it's a challenge. And what about, other artists say they're busy with oh man, cooking. I've never thought I'd be cooking for myself the last 2 months. Is there something that you guys? Is there something that maybe Paul maybe have stirred up or something, like what's on the menu today, or maybe going live streaming, cooking with Paul, and the fans tuning in or something like that?
We've actually, this is a conversation we had with Sharptone a few weeks ago. Is they essentially used our band to spearhead their Twitch efforts. They've had a channel that they built up and became an affiliate, but they're just sort of looking for an excuse to start it. So we started doing some live stream stuff, just general Q&A, but then also something, our guitarist Cody, vocalist Tyler, bassist Thomas, and we've all been playing so much Call of Duty Warzone. It's been a little bit disgusting.
That's great.
Yeah, man, dude, it's been a freaking blast. We were just talking before you started recording, but I've been staying up way too late most nights. It wasn't last night, the night before last night, two of my housemates and I got 3 first place victories in trios in the span of 2 hours. And we're like, oh no, we need to do other things with our lives. This is getting a little bit depressing. It went from oh yeah, we got one to oh man. So picking up video games and looking at streaming more. I think all the guys and I have been going at that. But then also at the house, I'm super fortunate. I've got just a group of awesome dudes that I live with. My business partner, his brother, one of our best buds, Zach, and then my buddy Phil from college. And we played this massive game of Global Axis and Allies, which is Risk on crack. If anybody has never heard of that, it's just super insane. But we just wrapped that up the other night. And yeah, man, we've been keeping busy. It's almost one of those deals where it's not looking forward to the workflow going back to normal when this is all said and done, because it's actually been kind of a nice little breath of fresh air in terms of I was talking about schedule expectations and the way the world has been go, you have to respond to emails immediately, you have to pick up phone calls as soon as they come in. That's sort of been relaxed a little bit, and that's really been a good change of pace for me.
With the live streaming that we just mentioned, now this is a very popular topic of discussion that's been on my show for the past, since we first started this. Now, bands that I've spoken to, they have talking about taking initiative on Twitch, Instagram Live, Facebook Live, what have you. There's also another website, I think it's called Stage It. Have you heard of this website I think you can do live streaming shows on there.
Yeah. I've seen some live concerts from bands on that, yeah.
Right. So now these bands that that are actually doing the live streaming shows, Insomnium, Code Orange, like some of these are actually going to live streaming venues, like empty venues, and broadcasting it for the fans. Now, this is an important one for me because I wanted to get your intake for a band that's, your third album. Do you think, as an artist, the quarantine-induced live streaming surge that's going on right now, do you think it's going to affect the touring musician business going forward? Do you still see bands doing this even after this is over?
I think, in my opinion, people will continue to take advantage of it at a higher level, but I don't think it's going to impact live shows in that you'll see more people trying to do live stuff to catch audiences' eyes. But I think the reason that live shows, because I think we could have made this argument from when YouTube first became, like when they first started supporting 720, you could have said, like, is this going to kill, concerts for people because you can get a camera crew out there now and really commit it to legacy through the internet. But I think it's opening up this avenue for a lot of people who hadn't previously considered it as viable at all, and they're starting to see the merit because of the things that they're watching and the things that they're experiencing. But I think, if anything, it's going to build a momentum behind the eventual return of live shows, because I feel like there's so much pent up energy and sort of just people missing live shows so badly that this almost is just contributing to that. People want to get out there and actually experience it, be able to flail around and not just sit at their computer monitor, I think. So yes,
like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I get so many different answers, and that's a great answer because it's different. If I were to see, a Wise Man's Fear in front of me right now, as opposed to seeing you guys, on the screen like you were just talking about. And let's say you do a festival here, or I guess I should say festivals in Europe. Festivals are more common in Europe. Let's do that. And let's say someone in the U.S. doesn't have access to, a show out in Europe, and you could sell a digital ticket to them.
Right.
It's just so many ideas you can bounce off from. And another thing that's very eye-opening to me is market saturation. Let's say all these bands are having cooped up writing all these lyrics. When this is all over, you can have all this new music that's gonna be filling everything up. At the same time, venues will be booked to no end. At the same time, and at the same time, you don't have venues to book into. So does that ever cross your mind when it comes to, after all this is done, what is going to happen? Or are you just kind of you know what, I'm not going to think about that right now. We got an album release coming up. Let's focus on that and then go from there.
A little bit of both. I think, like, I'll speculate about what's going to happen. And I agree with you. There's going to be a huge resurgence. But I don't know. I try to only occupy my mind, like we were saying, one day at a time, just figuring out the things that I can have sort of direct impact on, and whatever is actionable for me. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. So, I think we could almost experience something akin to how the post World War II, we had like the baby boomers erupt, and everybody came back from war, had a bunch of babies. Like, I think we're going to see a home recording revolution of that, where it's just like everybody's been sitting at home writing, recording, and then 2 months from now, there's just going to be like so many records coming out. It's going to be absurd and really hard to cut through the noise.
That's probably the best analogy I've ever heard. That's perfect. That's a great point. What about the albums? You have a new album coming out like right around the corner. Mm-hmm. Did that also ever cross your mind? Maybe pushing the album release further, because bands have done that. Lamb of God, Enslaved. There are a lot of other bands that maybe have been impacted by the pandemic when it comes to sticking to the release or moving it back.
For sure. I remember it was like a big deal when August Burns Red, because I'm pretty sure they decided to just stick with their original release date, and everyone's like, whoa. That kind of blew a lot of people's minds, because you're right. Everybody, there's some big band, and I can't remember who it is, somebody in the like arena metal rock crossover genre, but it was basically saying, like, what's the point of putting out a record if we can't tour to support it?
Yeah.
But I kind of have the opposite viewpoint, and this could be in part because something our band is focused, I would say primarily on, is creating good internet presence and utilizing the internet as much as possible. But I mean, we even talked to Sharptone about this, and they were like, yeah, I mean, we were worried at first. Currents has their record coming up in June, and they're like, we were worried that there was going to be a big dip in sales, but we decided to go ahead anyway. And they're like, it's been the opposite. They've had more than expected pre-sales, and I think it goes back to the combination of people sitting at home wanting new content, being on social media more than ever, receiving the branding and receiving the advertising for those records. Then also like the stimulus package, anybody who wasn't like very hand to mouth and like needed the stimulus package to live, they're like, well, I have some extra money. I might buy like a pre-order that I wouldn't normally buy. So a lot of like weird market factors in play. So I think maybe it's polarized spending habits, but as far as we're concerned, like all of an artist's revenue for the most part in this day and age is going to come from either Spotify or touring merch. And we haven't toured as heavily as most artists of our I guess tier, I would say,
Genre or
and just like listener base. I think there are
Yeah.
people that have fewer Spotify listeners than us that tour a lot more, and part of that's just due to where we are in life in terms of like balancing work life and geographically, even, how often can we get together and everybody devote a few weeks to go out. But we're viewing it as like, okay, how can we really just push Spotify to the next level and push, Apple Music and Deezer and see opportunities in, even some of the less popular streaming services and really kickstart something out there using all this extra time that we have down, that we can reach out to playlist curators, that we can, bounce ideas off the label and so forth.
Now I want to talk about the Valley of Kings, because now you're, talking about utilizing Spotify, releasing new music. This is your third album, with and is this the first, or is this the third straight with Sharptone?
This is our first with Sharptone. So we've done 2 independent records leading up to this, so it's kind of uncharted territories in a way.
Well, when it comes to uncharted territory, you had one producer that you work with, Johnny Frank. I know one of your interviews, you talked about him. This is your third album with him since 2014, and you talked about how he understood the sound and he understood the collaboration of 6 of you guys into one record. What is it like working with him? What is it like working with a producer, knowing that, like, you're sticking to the producer? Is it a sense of, I guess, you're comfortable, that you know where you want to be with a producer? And I guess talk about how the experience has been working with them on 3 straight records.
First, dude, awesome question. Yeah, dude, it has been such an overwhelmingly positive experience. We didn't really know what to expect when we first went to him. We kind of chose him based on the Attack, Acclaim, and a couple records that he had done in the year or 2 leading up to when we first tracked in 2014, and it sounded good. So we're like, okay, like, let's do it. But it turns out so much of the success that a band has with a producer is the chemistry between them and the willingness to like learn and try out suggestions from one another. Like, it has to go both ways. And I think maybe by virtue of being in a band in the past, he's very, very receptive to criticism. He doesn't take things personally. But he's like able to communicate and collaborate with multiple people, but he's also able to be like, hey guys, shut up. Nathan is tracking. Why are you like, not now?
Third album, he's like, oh, third album, you guys should know by now, or something like that.
Pretty much, dude. No, but also just like the stuff that he's created with Bill Murray, I think is a great testament to how agile and creative his musical mind is as well. You see him snap genres back and forth pretty fluidly. Like, it's really like a fun mental exercise is to try to put like one genre on Bill Murray, like a comprehensive label, and it's just really not possible. But yeah, in beyond that, we've just become super close friends, which you either become close friends or bitter enemies after spending, in total, it would have been about 60 days between these records. So each record will devote roughly 2 days per song over 11 songs. So usually it would come out to about 20 days, but locked in the basement with him. We'd sleep in his basement. We'd wake up, work in the basement, and half the time we'd go grab dinner with him afterwards. But we became such close friends that, like, Nathan and I text him most days. We just stay in really close contact. We're, best friends at this point. And Again, that has helped the communication pathways to be as open as possible, and that's really the cornerstone for a good record. Is you know, you want to assume everybody's got the practice in, they've got the skills sort of down. The thing that takes a record from being like decent to being phenomenal is just all about producing, and that is just a communication stream. So yeah, it's, man, nothing but positive things to say about Johnny. He's been an absolute treasure to work with.
You know, it's a sense of consistency is probably one of the more challenging things when it comes to a band sticking with someone they're comfortable with. And I've seen bands, I've known bands who actually go from one producer to the next, and at some point they're like, okay, let's produce our own record, you know, and then it just kind of, which works for them. That's fine. It's really nice to hear that an artist like yourselves found a producer that you guys have a consistent basis when it comes to relationship, sound, musicianship. That's great to hear. I love hearing that, and I think it'll be great for you guys going forward.
Dude, absolutely. And it was so refreshing too to experience that, because I think in the industry you hear a lot of horror stories, whether it's from a label's impact on a band sound or it's a producer, like you said, they change producers and either their sound changes or whatever the case may be. It was just refreshing to find somebody who got what we were doing. Like, we explained the concept for Castle and we explained what we wanted to do. But he was really hugely instrumental, especially on that first record, of like, you know, helping us sort of come into our own and discover our identity. Because honestly, he should start a label. If I were him, I would probably start a label, because he gets band development on a level that most people don't like most labels don't understand, I would say. So yeah, it's really cool working with him and just watching his mind work in all these different directions.
Well, shout out to Johnny Frank. You gotta give him some props right there. Now
Absolutely.
Let's get to I know we're 20 minutes into this podcast, you know, but I want to talk about Valley of Kings. Excellent record. Now, Fantasycore, is that what you would say you describe yourself? I hear that name thrown around a lot in the fan base and your band.
Yeah, dude, for sure. And actually, it's kind of funny. I've told this story to a couple people, but there was a moment back in like 2013 or 14 when we were writing for Castle, and we sort of had the idea. We're like, what if we like called ourselves Fantasycore? Because we kept trying. You know, you'd have relatives ask you, so what kind of music do you play? And it's like, oh, you know, kind of like. Yeah, at first we're like, it's modern melodic metalcore with fantastical lyrics and elements of medieval instrumentation. It's like, just became such a garbled mouthful to try to describe. So we're like, what are we doing? Metalcore. How are we doing it? Through fantasy. It's Fantasycore. And it, you know, just was the concision that we needed to get the point across to someone who had never heard of us. But also, we sort of have a philosophy that is, like, as musicians, the most dangerous thing you can do is to be forgettable. So if people remember nothing else about us, you know, we want them to remember, oh, they call themselves Fantasycore. Like, I'll at least see if they stack up. And even if they hate our music, like, you know, we want to pique the curiosity and hopefully win some people over by describing what we do to them. And if that sounds like something they're interested in, they can just catch that based on the name.
Well, case in point, what genre did I bring up to describe you guys? Fantasycore. So the name
Exactly.
sticks. I think you guys should stick with that. Now,
Absolutely.
I want to throw one name at you, Patrick Rothfuss. Now, okay, I made you want to spit out your drink.
You can't. I was gonna say, you can't just call upon my deity and not warn me. Yeah,
I have to talk about this. So,
absolutely.
Talk about his influence on yourself as a person, and you know, I guess the other five of you guys. You know, how did that come about when you guys decided this is what we want to write about? This is one of our main influences. You know, and I know his first book, I can't remember the first book. It was
The Name of the Wind.
Yeah, and then the New York Times bestseller, which is, you know, the Wise Man's Fear, which, you know, contributed to your band title. So explain the relationship that you guys have developed within yourselves as the band, like coming up with this band name, and how an author like Patrick has been such a big influence on you.
Dude, absolutely. I first read those books at the recommendation of my good friend Dr. Tom Craddock, who I'll tag in this. Super smart dude, super high standard for epic high fantasy. So I knew it was gold upon recommendation. But he sent me that series, and I read it, and it just completely changed my perception of what could be accomplished with a fantasy novel. Like, I'd read a lot of fantasy growing up. That was kind of my favorite genre for pastime reading, and nothing had ever hit me like that, just in terms of the prose of the writing, the narrative voice, the stylization. It was all there. it was something that I was like I'm getting more out of this from writing and a craftsmanship standpoint than I get out of like a classic. And I just couldn't believe the world that he had built and the way he was delivering it, all with this sort of intrigue that plays into how the story is being told, which is a whole conversation unto its own. But that I started reading those books in the first like 2 years that I was in college. And that's right when we were trying to figure out what we wanted to call the band. And at the same time, we were writing what became Castle in the Clouds. And I had started writing lyrics for it because Joe actually used to be a guitarist, and then he switched to vocals, not last minute, but like, you know, at some point during the writing process of that record. So I was just coming up with some lyrics to try to match to songs. And I was like, hey, like, if it's cool with you guys, what if we just run with this sort of Pilgrim's Progress style thing, storyline? But it was the like the feel of it and the tone of it was very inspired by what I was reading. And I've never read anything like The Wise Man's Fear where I read it and I just want to go write something. And like, doesn't matter if it's music or like, you know, a short story or whatever, but it's like he makes me want to write stuff. And so it just seemed like the perfect sort of homage to him to use the name to describe fantasy metalcore. But then, you know, also we kind of repurposed the name to be a statement against the destructive power of pride. So the sort of like Socratic principle there being the more you know, the wiser and more knowledgeable you get, the more you realize you just don't know anything. So it's the dichotomy of like, if you are wise, it's virtually impossible to be prideful. And anybody who's prideful, it's like almost guaranteed that they're not really wise. So that's kind of where that bridge formed.
So, man, there's so much I want to talk about based on what you just said, because it's interesting. I think that's amazing that an author just made you guys want to. This is where you guys are right now, because just the influence that an author can have through, his work. And I feel like you've given that novel like just bigger depth just with your songwriting and with the sound. It's now you're just missing a movie, man. I mean,
dude.
Why not just put it all together?
We should be so lucky.
And you talked about striking a balance within the songs that you write. And you talked about 3 elements. Mm-hmm. And
you did your freaking homework, man.
Now, hey, man, this is the fan within me. So I was, like I said, I was really excited about all this. Arc of the story, one, and then self-sufficient. You wanted the songs to represent themselves. And then the third thing, which you just talked about, how it's putting into the real life experience. Do you think you guys delivered that exactly how you wanted to? And do you see fans taking that in the same way?
At risk of sounding cocky in light of what I just talked about, I personally think the stuff that we've written has held up in those regards. So, and I think the litmus test for me, at least, is I can go back, and if I listen through Castle in the Clouds, like the whole record, there's not a lot of stuff that jumps out where I'm like, oh, like that's super cringy, or oh, that like aged like milk because I'm not seeing that person anymore, or because, this circumstantial thing that I got riled up about isn't a force in my life, or I've gained enough perspective that, like, why was I, whatever. I think a lot of records that I hear in the genre tend to be really temporal and almost like emotional lashback at life events or at relationships status quo, changing, staying the same, whatever. But I honestly think, like, for our stuff, both musically and lyrically, looking back, like, I don't regret anything, and I don't know that a lot of bands can necessarily say that. So, I think, honestly, like, it's a huge team effort to make it happen, but I do think that the songs succeed in that regard, that they have sort of the triad of meanings that are being delivered, and yeah, I like them.
Who said that it was Journey of the Center of the Earth meets Lord of the Rings? Was that you?
Yeah.
So, and with a tragic twist at the end with this third album, is that what that is? So it's like
dark.
I love that. That's great. And you talk about the first record you had. I think you had like harps and like Gregorian chants, and it was like you had that classic medieval vibe. The second one, Lost City, we haven't really touched on that much, but you talk about it had a King Arthur influence. Is that true? And had
your
Egyptian side of things. Hey, we're gonna do another interview, man. This is gonna be just one of the follow-ups.
I'm all in. Yeah.
And then the third, you talk about like it all coming together, and I believe it was a triad of earth, sky, and water. Is that what you? So how do you feel? You guys did choose songs of What Went Wrong and Relics of the Nilix. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Why'd you pick those songs as singles?
That's a good question, man. Relics Relics was sort of an easy choice for a first one for us because there's so much story motion happening in that song, which is also why I got a music video. You know, similar to how in our second record, Black Root Forest was our first single. We're like, this is really central to how the story is being set. So let's use this to deliver sort of the first taste to everybody. But also, kind of as I touched on a bit ago, a lot of times people's perception of a band when they sign with a label, the first comment of the first thing that they then put out on YouTube is going to be, Rise Records made these guys go soft. Like, these guys are radio rock now. Like, I can't believe that the label told them how to live their lives. And that could not be further from our experience with Sharptone. Like, dude, they have been so freaking supportive of everything we've been doing. Like, we even had we had like an hour-long conversation with the owner, Sean, when this all started, and we explained Fantasycore to him, and he's like, I love it. That's awesome. We're moving with that. And just explained, our writing process. And he's like, we're like, so we're about to go to the studio. You guys are funding this. Do you want rough cuts or like, what's the revision process like? He's like, I don't want to hear it. Literally just send me the masters when they're ready. Like, I don't want my perception to be skewed by an unfinished mix. I just want to hear the songs when they're done. And we're like, okay. And so they were so laissez-faire for the whole song recording process that, we just got to have all the creative direction that we wanted. And that was amazing.
Okay, now that you brought that up, so
yeah.
Before we go talk about Valley of Kings a little bit more, we had Currents on our show a couple weeks ago. I talked to Brian.
Dude, well done, man.
And so Brian talked about a very just praise about Sharptone. Now, Sharptone, what I'm seeing is that they're being just a perfect example of how labels should be run. Is that what you're seeing too as well? Because they helped Currents. I believe they're a big part of why Currents are where they are right now. And I believe it's just another benefactor of showing how Wiseman Sphere is showing from where you guys started to where you guys are now. Like, it's giving Fantasycore even more boost being with someone like Sharptone. And I know you have a lot of amazing things to say about them, but how do you feel like as far as like a labels are? I feel like they're really setting an example for everyone else out there.
I think the most telling thing in that regard is that a lot of the bands that are on my Spotify list, that's like the 75 songs I actually want to listen to anytime, a lot of those are Sharptone bands. So they're doing something right from a recruitment perspective, but also, as you'd mentioned, Currents, they've fostered, Alpha Wolf, like signing Crystal Lake, that won them so many points in my mind. I was like, they're just seeing talent, they're fostering it, and they're delivering it in the right place. But I think a lot of the root cause of that is Sean was one of the co-founders of Sumerian Records back in the day. So Sean runs Sharptone now. But before that, he managed Born of Osiris for like 8 years, or maybe this was concurrent with that. And then even before that, he was in a touring band. So it's like he understands the industry. He understands bands. And it's not like he's trying to capitalize on them. It's like this dude is excited about the future of music, and he sees what he could do to shape it. And he's just like, he's there for the ride. He wants to support artists. He wants to really push stuff out to the kids who want to hear it. So I think that makes all the difference, man.
Yeah, I think it was important just to bring that up because Sharptone's it's a big year for them. They're taking advantage of this opportunity, and the sky's the limit for you guys and that label. Now I'm gonna get back on the album now. Valley of Kings. You talked about the one thing that I loved about this album, and it's about characters that are based on cornerstone philosophical worldviews.
Yeah.
And I think it's genius what you guys did when it comes to songwriting. I mean, it's you, and who else is involved in the songwriting along with you?
Dude, literally everyone is
okay,
involved, because
this is the most collaborative album, of course,
sure,
from the other two. Now, the purpose of these characters were to create. Now I'm going to quote you on this. I believe I'm quoting you. Create commentary on the pitfalls of certain philosophies on why they may not work, showing that those characters themselves are not perfect. Could it also be different traits inside someone's head?
Dude, you're inside my head right now. So
I'm just curious because as I'm reading the lyrics, I'm like, is that what they're trying to aim for? Because that's what I felt.
Yeah, man, dude. Very good pickup. Like that was something we initially were playing around with, like doing 7 deadly sins, like each character is a sin, but that just felt stale and overdone. And it was like something about it was good. There was there's a nugget of gold somewhere in there, but that became, okay, each character represents a worldview. And it's sort of left open-ended throughout the record because this record is man versus self is sort of the central conflict type, whereas Lost City was man versus man, Castle was man versus environment. So it's sort of left open-ended to the listener to determine whether, you have these 5 warriors and, they sort of, some of them meet their ends in different ways and, are killed and die off, and, some don't, but, it's not made completely clear if that's those actual people going and living and dying, or if that is, the conflicting, you just said it, but like the philosophies that are fighting back and forth internally within one man as he's experiencing life and sort of trying to figure out, what works, what doesn't work, and why.
Do you feel like you're growing along with the songwriting you're doing? Are you, of course, is it, what I'm saying? When you write something, you feel like you unlocked a different part about your mindset on how you approach things.
For sure, dude. And actually, so with Castle in the Clouds, I was a creative writing minor, and I approached that record as
awesome.
Let's write a story. And that's cool. Like I said, I don't regret anything about that record. I think it works super well. But it also serves as a springboard into growth as a writer, and specifically as a songwriter, because that was totally new territory for me. I know the other guys had experience, writing songs and committing lyrics to stuff. But it was something new to me. And so with The Lost City, it sort of became, okay, well, rather than basically instead of mirroring Pilgrim's Progress and how do we turn that into a fantasy metalcore record, like how do we take 2 separate sort of sets of mythos, combine them, and produce something that's, even more original, set in the same original universe. And so that was a new challenge in that regard. And then for this one, it's been, okay, we're taking a book, we're taking a movie, we're taking, freaking like comic strips and soundtrack inspiration. We're just, making it all into this one mangled story that's maybe happening inside a guy's head, but is maybe, a quest of these 5 warriors, and just really, pushing the limits. So it's, every record, I feel like, together we're all learning skills, and then we're building on top of them, and we're taking inspiration and we're building on inspiration. So, and dude, LP4 is going to be freaking bananas. We were just talking concepts the other night, and I think we're locking in on an idea, and it's going to be pretty sick.
Man, I think, dude, all you're missing is just writing a movie script. Just get that in. Like you're developing all these just talented songwriting and just different metaphors and different life viewpoints that you're just putting it all into one very I guess exceptional art. You're putting it out for the people to hear. And you're actually conveying that message in a very productive manner, which is not easy to do, man. Especially when it comes to Fantasycore. And of course, you're striking a nerd like me. That's I'm in that target audience.
That's the goal, though. Is like I don't really want to write songs for a group of people. Like we've had this discussion as a band. It's like, dude, I just want to write stuff that I am so into, and that like I would be so into. And why isn't there a band that's writing about battles? And why isn't there a band that's like has a made up universe? And so it's like, let's just do it. Because if I had never heard of the band and I heard about that, I'd be like, heck yeah, like finally, someone's doing that. Why not? So
I mean, think about it. If someone were to search the Breath of the Wild gameplay, like your song's gonna come up there. It's just an example. It'll
be on the 20,000th page of Google, but it will come up there.
Fans that are listening, just go to YouTube and just search it up once the song, once the release is out, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. Have your aspirations as a person or a band, have they changed or evolved since when you first started? Do you see things differently now?
For sure, man. Like Joe and I have had this talk a lot. Our harsh vocalist. When we started, we just wanted to make an EP, like play 5 shows and get a Facebook page that got like 100 likes. And we're like, then we can throw in the towel. That'll be like really fun. So it's one of those deals where I've heard a lot about the drudgery of sort of growth, which is, like, oh, once you reach the top of the mountain, it's like, it's not that exciting. And then there's always another peak, but it's like, from our perspective, that's super exciting. Like we have been able to accomplish, and we have not done anything crazy. We're not like a big group by any stretch of the imagination, but we've blown our very small expectations out of the water. And that's so fun, man. It's there's a Calvin and Hobbes strip that basically he tells his mom he tells Calvin tells Hobbes that he's been sandbagging his grades to his mom by like, well, if she expects D's and I get a C, then I knocked it out of the park. And it's like, I feel like that's kind of our approach to goals and expectation setting is we're like, hey, let's be very realistic, conservatively realistic about what we can accomplish. And then it's like, if we surpass that, that's awesome. And yeah, we don't really set that many super hard and fast goals. It's a lot of, I guess like the closest example is like right now, bucket list thing for us, we would love to play overseas, really anywhere. It doesn't really matter, but it's like, that would just be so fun. And like with that group of guys, just the memories of a lifetime guaranteed. That would be awesome. So
you haven't played overseas yet, is that correct?
No, yeah, we haven't. But one day we want to try to do that. But yeah, and I think what I love maybe most about this band is everybody is just in it for the right reasons, and like everybody loves the music, and we're best friends, and it's just so much fun. So yeah, our goals have changed a little bit, but the way that we set them has kind of stayed the same.
Yeah, can you imagine like all the fans, like all the fans overseas who are nerds like us? Like just imagine the outreach that you guys would get. But of course, it'll work over time, and I think you guys are doing the right thing and on the right path. Do you have a favorite song off the album?
I'm going to go with Forest of Illusions. Tyler and I, that's kind of both of our favorite. And I can't really put my finger on why. It just has maybe the best like climactic point of any song on the record towards the end of it. It's like Grey King did this for me on the last record. On this one, it's Forest of Illusions. But also there's this cool little like zither break or dulcimer. I can't remember which one it ended up being, but dude, it's just like a kind of subtle layer at one point right before the song goes to a little pre-chorus situation. But yeah, there's just like a lot of stuff that's subtle in that song that all amounts to, in my mind, it's like a perfect track.
Now we're reaching the end of this podcast, unfortunately, but of course I'm going to bring you back again because this was just a great conversation. Yeah. Now I'm going to put you on the hot seat in a second here, all right? As if you weren't on the hot seat already. So if it was up to you, this is not the hot seat question, by the way. Okay. If you had, what would your favorite artist to collaborate with? Who would that be if it was up to you that you haven't collaborated with? Anybody?
Dude, I would love to do something with Cove Reber, the vocalist for Seosin's self-titled record, and we reached out to him because we wanted to have a clean feature on this record, and it didn't work out.
Plug it in. Go ahead and plug it in. Shout out.
There you go. Plug it into shout out, baby. I'm sure all the guys would have different answers, but for me, I think if we could do something with Cove on cleans, and he does harshes now with Dead American, which is super duper cool. He's a huge force on me musically as an inspiration and an influence. And yeah, one day I'd love to do that. I think that would that'd be one of those things where it's like, sort of out of body. If you do something like that, it's like, whoa, Cove knows who my band is, and he sang on the track with us,
And we will tag him on this, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Who are your influences? You're a drummer for the band. It's not every day you hear that drummer is one of the main songwriters for the band. Who are your influences, just in general?
I love Make Them Suffer. As far as heavy music goes, I think they're kind of the pinnacle. And they had for music what Pat Roth has had for fantasy for me, in that I read the description behind some of Sean's metaphors and some of his imagery in Neverbloom, and I was shooketh, as the youths say. It just like flipped my world upside down.
That just opened up a new venue for me, because we're actually planning on having them on a show soon. So that's actually interesting. That's very interesting to me. That's awesome.
You have to ask him about the Lord of Woe trajectory.
Lord of Woe trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, since you're being a songwriter, I'm going to see if you know your own songs.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to call out some lyrics. I'm sure you know them. I'm sure you got them. I get so many different answers. So some artists are like, "Oh no, I'm not going to get any of them," and they get all of them. And then it's the opposite the other way. But I'm sure you'll get them. So I'm just going to call out songs. You're just going to name the song.
Mm-hmm.
See what it's from. All right. I just picked some random lyric.
This is the hot seat question.
All right. This is the hot seat. We'll get a sound bit here, hopefully. Hot seat. All right. Wear a smile that's held open by an iron hook. See shadows and traces of death everywhere you look.
Forges of Fire, baby.
Yeah. You already knew that. As soon
Dude,
as I started reading.
I think that song might have the meanest lyrics of anything we've done. And Nathan wrote the instrumentals to that, and it's such a ripper of a song.
Dude, I just love reading your lyrics just out loud. It's just like it's just great to say. Like it has so much depth, so much character, and that goes back to the characters that you actually produce in the song. So genius. Now, okay, moving on. Try seeing things through another's eyes. You don't have to lobotomize to open someone else's eyes. I love reading this. You have become like spies.
Dude, that is Wrath of a Gentleman.
Yeah.
Baby. Yeah. Yeah, that was one. We made a pivot on those lyrics because that was something that would have become cringy, like, over time. I'm very glad that we made some last minute adjustments to that verse.
Hey man, no regrets, dude. I'm proud of the work you have. So
well, thank you.
And that goes a long way for myself. Okay, I'm throwing for a loop here. I've turned everyone against me, and I've learned it was a great mistake. And how long must we live like this? How long must this doubt persist?
That's The River and the Rock. And that, dude, Nathan and Tyler, I think Tyler wrote most of the lyrics for that one. There were a few spots that I collaborated with him, but that one pretty much belongs to him. But I love that track, dude. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love that song. All right. I fear there is no cure for this. Lethargy wrapped narcotic bliss. No shock that can awaken me. No force to break this apathy.
Vitality.
Man, see, you're doing great, man. You were like, I'm not gonna get this.
I was worried. I was like, man, I haven't looked at these lyrics at all.
All right, this is the last one. And here I had just quit thinking of you, and here your name was finally nothing more than a sigh of the breeze. Sigh on the breeze.
Oh, dude. Dreamscape,
which
I confused with the Moonless Night.
I was getting
all
worried.
The time.
I was like,
no,
this is the last one. Don't fail me now.
Yeah, those first two records both have like a soft, sad song, and I always get the titles confused. But
awesome, dude.
Dreamy boy.
You got a 6 out of 6. You know what's funny? We call this Interview Under Fire because before we started like doing all this podcasting, it was called Interview Under Fire because what would happen is if we do this interview in person, you would be eating chicken wings with hot sauce, and each question we ask, we go a level higher on the hot sauce level. So,
first piece, where you at?
now listen up. So, having said that, when you guys actually, come back on touring, come to Dallas, and we would love to bring all 6 of you guys in.
Let's do it. That'd be so fun.
Can you imagine? Like that. So we just stuck with the name Interview Under Fire, so everybody just loves saying it. So anyway, for the listeners who don't know, that is a story behind the name. We will bring those back. And Paul, why not be our first guest, man? Bring the entire crew in.
If we make it to Dallas, we would love to. That would be freaking amazing.
Awesome, dude. Any last shout outs or any plugs you want to put in before we end this thing up?
Dude, shout out Sean from Make Them Suffer for being down to do guest vocals. That was awesome for us. That was a super trip. Joe has a tattoo of Make Them Suffer on his forearm, so it was a very full circle to get him on a track with the music video. Yeah. Shout out Sharptone. Shout out anybody who has been following us since Castle, like you, my friend. You are a freaking champion and a national treasure.
Hey, you are a national treasure. We all gotta stick together during this time, man. And here we are talking about what we're passionate about. It's artists like you, Paul, who gave me the reason to do what I do. So, kudos to you guys, and kudos to the music you guys put out. Now, everyone who's listening, this is important. Valley of Kings comes out May 29th on Sharptone Records. Support these guys. They will be back on the road as soon as and everyone who's listening as well. You can listen to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all major podcast streams. Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show. I can't wait until we talk again, and I'll see you next time, man.
Dude, thanks so much for having me. Let's set up a round 2 soon. This was a blast.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Interview Under Fire podcast. If you guys liked what you heard, please subscribe and share our channel. And please leave a 5-star review, as that helps us tremendously. And also, if you guys have any questions or comments, you can find us at Interview Under Fire at Facebook or at Instagram. Or you can write us directly at schwag@interviewunderfire.com. That's SCHWAG at interviewunderfire.com. Or Rezablade. That's REZABLADE at interviewunderfire.